Hey everyone, good evening and thank you so much for coming to the Mayoral Forum on Climate Action. I'm Belvin Olsov, I'm the co-director of the Charleston Climate Coalition, and I'll be your moderator this evening. Is everyone here concerned about the climate crisis? I'm hearing yes. Oh, I thought so. Charleston is one of the most climate vulnerable cities in the entire nation. But the threat that we face is also an opportunity for action and for leadership. This event is brought to you in partnership with the League of Women Voters of the Charleston area, as well as a number of environmental organizations: Charleston Climate Coalition, Robert Lund Sierra Club, Charleston Moves, Sustainability Institute, Root Down Building Collective, and the CofC Environmental Sustainability Studies Program. And all of these groups concern themselves in various ways with pushing forward climate action, the various policies and initiatives that will lower our greenhouse gas pollution. Tonight, we're looking to have a substantive forum on policy. All the organizations sponsoring this candidate forum are nonpartisan organizations and have not endorsed any candidate. This is a nonpartisan event. And more preamble, a candidate forum is not a debate. There will be no direct exchanges between the candidates. A forum is an opportunity for candidates to share their platforms throughout the community and for voters to educate themselves. To keep the flow of our forum, we have an official timekeeper. Jerry Gabot is our timekeeper. Yeah, let's hear for time. The concept of time. For each of our candidates, Jerry will hold up a sign reading 30 seconds remaining and then a stop sign when the candidate must stop speaking. So candidates will have 60 seconds for their opening statement. Candidates will then have 90 seconds to respond to questions. Candidates may take an additional 60 seconds for rebuttals after all the other candidates have responded. A rebuttal is an opposing argument or a contradiction to what an opposing candidate has said. If you wish to make a rebuttal, please signal me by raising your hand. A candidate is allowed one rebuttal per candidate question. It will be at the discretion of me, the moderator, considering the overall time we have, whether to halt the opportunity to rebut. And then at the end, there will be 60 seconds for closing statements. We will be starting by rotating in alphabetical order. So the first opening statement will be started by Mr. Cogswell and then go down the line. These questions were collected from the collective brain power of our partner organizations. And we expect audience members to be respectful and quiet during the forum. So please no applause until asked. So to introduce, we have William Cogswell, Mika Gadsden, Deborah Gammons may be arriving, Clay Milton, Peter Sheed, and John Tecklenburg. So let us begin with our opening statements. Please, Mr. Cogswell, begin.
Got to hold it. All right. Well, thank you all for having us here tonight. Glad to be here. I think this is an incredibly important topic. My background is born and raised here in Charleston, very concerned about where our city is going to be in the next century or so. So that's why I decided to run for mayor, because I think what happens in the next 3 to 5 years is really going to define our trajectory over the next 100. So look forward to the discussion tonight. I got 30 seconds. And I'll just wrap it up there, folks. Really looking forward to talking with you all tonight. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mika Gadsden. I am what I like to describe as the daughter of Jim Crow refugees. I am also just wrapped up a stint with the College of Charleston as the inaugural community leader in residence. I'm a climate activist and content creator, but my time as a climate activist has really afforded me a great opportunity to understand the issue that is the climate crisis. I look forward to sharing with you all more about my platform, which centers the climate crisis and how we can move forward and help the city also keep our residents and our cyclists and our pedestrians safer. Thank you.
My name is Clay Middleton, born and raised in the city of Charleston, a place called Bayside Manor. My wife and I, Nicole, who's here, we are raising our 2 boys in West Ashley. I graduated from Burke High School and the Citadel. Have been in the South Carolina Army National Guard for 23 years, currently as a Lieutenant Colonel Battalion Commander, and worked for Congressman Jim Clyburn, worked in the Obama administration, worked for the city of Charleston as well. So looking forward to a robust conversation regarding climate and regarding what we can do to ensure that not only my 6 and 8-year-old have a city worth fighting for when they become adults, but that all of us are able to look back and be proud of the work that we've done together as a community to be more resilient. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Peter. Shayed. I'm a lifelong resident of Charleston. My family came from Lebanon back in 1899. We established a store right down the street from where we are right now at 493 King Street. I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for over 40 years. I've been on city council for 2 terms. And I entered this race because we needed to fill a void. You'll hear a lot about our backgrounds, and the question that you'll always have to answer yourself is, who's best to lead the city with the experience and the background that they've had over the course of their lives? We have a lot of issues that we're going to be addressing tonight, and hopefully with these forums that you'll be more educated and well-informed, and I appreciate your vote on November the 7th. Thank you.
Gotta keep it down. Sorry about that. Hey, Mayor Tecklenburg here, y'all. I'm so honored to serve as your mayor. You know, when I ran in 2015, hardly anyone was talking about climate change. I spoke about it a little bit, but when that big storm happened in 2015 and hurricane after hurricane subsequently, we didn't care what caused it. We're believers. Climate change is happening. So immediately we're focused on the direct impacts. I say that Charleston is at the direct line of fire for climate change and sea level rise. You got to check out our sea level rise and flooding strategies online. But then we looked at the root causes, what's happening in the world, and I'm proud to say that the city of Charleston is the first and only city in the state of South Carolina to pass a climate action plan, and we'll be talking more about that tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, candidates. Our first question tonight will be on transportation. Transportation accounts for 29% of all U.S. carbon emissions, largely driven by car travel. The Charleston area has higher per capita miles traveled by car than the U.S. average. Are there bicycle, pedestrian, and public transportation priorities on which you, as mayor, would prefer to focus that you feel will substantially mitigate climate-polluting emissions in the city? These can be systemic or small scale, and they could be policies or infrastructure. We'll be starting with Ms. Gadsden.
Yes, we are a car-dependent city. We have proof from other cities, both here in the United States and abroad. Cities like Paris, very recently, have adopted a new outlook in terms of how to plan for public transit, right? How to become less car-dependent. So these changes can happen. They will take time, but you can change the trajectory. Right now, we are still treating Charleston from a commercial sense, from a residential sense, as if it's the same city, yet we've grown so much over the last few years. We're the largest city in the state. So I would definitely look to create more protective intersections for cyclists. I would also make sure that we get off that list, which makes us number 2. In 2020, we were number 2 in deadliest, the state was number 2 in deadliest cities for pedestrians in the country, and number 5 deadliest place, the city of Charleston, number 5 for people outside of their vehicle. We can change that, and that would be one of my top priorities.
Mr. Middleton?
So for us in the city of Charleston, whether it's downtown, James Island, Johns Island, Daniel Island, West Ashley, throughout our entire city, I think the focus ought to be on how we move. Where are our job centers? Having more walkable communities, which we will call 10-minute communities, so that regardless of where you live, you are within a 10-minute walk to your school, to your place of work, to the doctor's office, to other essential locations of your day-to-day activities. And then the next step is certainly having 30-minute communities so that you're no more than 30 minutes away by car. Also, just the access points that are needed throughout the city, whether that be in public transportation. So we have, whether it is park and ride, how do we approach public transportation, right? At times we think if you're taking public transportation, there's something wrong with that. So making that more accessible and affordable and livable for all of Charleston. And as it relates to cycling, walking, same thing. Even on King Street, I think from Broad and Calhoun King and Calhoun, further down the Broad and King should be no cars. So these are things that we can do together and things that I would work on as mayor.
Mr. Shade?
When you look at the history of Charleston, particularly where we're located right now, it was built as a city for convenience, for you to be able to walk to your place of worship, walk to your work, walk to your grocery store, your meat market, your fish market, things of that nature. That was the history of Charleston, and our density made life a whole lot simpler in that way. When you look at the methods that we've employed over the past several decades, we've got away from that model and sprawled out. So one of the issues you need to do is think of how to bring where you live so that you can work and play within that closer vicinity. You also have to have alternative means of transportation. I've been a huge supporter of our bike lane. When it came up for a vote back in 2016, we had 500 people attending that city council meeting, and we had moved to the Gear Yard, and it passed by a slim majority. But I've been a huge advocate of that bridge being built. I live in Northbridge Terrace and been working with Charleston Moves for that funding so we can have an alternate means for transportation. I've seen too many people trying to walk across that North Bridge to Cosgrove into downtown on Brandenburg, and take their lives in their own hands, literally walking down that medium. So we need to come up with alternate means of transportation, be it by bike or walking or through public transportation being more accessible. Thank you.
Mr. Tecklenburg?
So reducing emissions is a key part of our climate action plan. Our goal is to reduce 2018 emissions by 56% in the year 2030 and to be at net zero by 2050. How are we going to do that? Buildings, by the way, is the biggest loss of energy in the city, but transportation is second. So we need to promote more public transit. We've never had the greatest system in the world. We finally have low country rapid transit under design, and early phases of construction will begin in about 2 years. It'll serve all the way from the fairgrounds up in Ladson to the medical university. Better public transit. We need to convert to electric vehicles. The city is leading the way. We've started our EV conversion. We bought sedans already. We're buying our first electric garbage truck. They're still about twice as expensive as a diesel, but if you factor in the maintenance and all the other costs over time, they really are about the same price. The bike and pedestrian facilities takes a while sometimes, but we're getting there. We have a bike ped plan and we're following it. Biggest component of it, though, is to create a connection, a safe connection between the peninsula and West Ashley, and we've secured a contract for $74 million to build that bridge. We passed it, approved it just a couple of weeks ago at council, and then we're going to add the low line, and it's stop time. Thanks.
Mr. Coxwell?
Yeah, I spent the past 25 years of my business career renovating historic buildings. I got my master's degree from Columbia University, where I got honors for my thesis on sustainable building envelopes. I do think the way we build is pretty critical in terms of climate control, climate change initiatives. I also believe very strongly in public transportation, and as has been pointed out previously, it's severely lacking in our region. That is why my company that I'm no longer part of as of January 1, because I've decided to run for mayor, is renovating the historic Navy Hospital on Rivers Avenue, and that was purchased, and the redevelopment plan centered around it being the first transit-oriented development in the Lowcountry, because we need to encourage the built environment to get away from the dependency on cars. And so I'm proud to be part of that. That should be completed in the next 2 years. But I'll be honest with you, it was kind of a bear to get off the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will be on adaptation and resilience. The Dutch Dialogues Project, wherein experts from the Netherlands shared a holistic live-with-water approach, championed green infrastructure as a central component of adaptation to rising sea levels. Rain gardens, green roofs, tree coverage, and urban creeks are all examples of green infrastructure as opposed to gray infrastructure like pipes, pumps, and traditional seawalls. As mayor, how would green infrastructure factor into your climate adaptation plan? Starting with Mr. Middleton. Yes, as mayor, how would green infrastructure factor into your climate adaptation plan?
What would be center to it? I really think where we are now in the 21st century, we have to retrofit Charleston. We need to think about having a green bond. We need to think about having what others call a green infrastructure portfolio standard. When you think about all buildings, not just public buildings, making sure that individuals for developers even, as they want to do projects, are they using renewable material to do that? How is that factored in? Even when we think about creating community hubs and resiliency hubs throughout the city of Charleston, there are resources out there in their cities across the country that are already doing this. And we are nowhere near being able to access those funds and implement things that other communities have been doing in recent years, not 10 years ago, recently. So those are some of the things that we would do, that I would do as mayor, and that we would work on together. This all boils down to how we want our city to be long after we're gone. And we have to think about how we deal with water, how we are more affordable, accessible, and livable throughout the city of Charleston. So green won't just be a color we wear from time to time. It will be central based on our values, based on our budget, and based on how we, throughout the city, throughout every department, how we engage in things that we do.
A long time ago, one of the early Earth Days celebrations that we had, the slogan was, think globally, but act locally. So we have to address this issue for green structures from a local standpoint. And you're going to have to look at some of the older buildings that we have in Charleston and as we retrofit them. So the city of Charleston owns several buildings throughout. And as we renovate those buildings and upgrade those buildings and maintain those buildings, you start with that incentive of making those much more green friendly and providing those structures with the necessary ways to cut down our emissions. And you do that with better climate control interior, with using proper materials to do that as well. And as you go through the city, and particularly in West Ashley, the renovation work that is going on through some of the older houses, you provide incentives for folks, work with them, and provide them with incentives of how to, when they renovate those homes, making sure that you are providing with them the proper mechanisms for green-friendly structures. Thank you.
So I've figured out a few things in my life. But one thing I've figured out is I don't know it all. And so hire the best people you can find to figure things out and make things happen. And I got the best in the business, we do, at the City of Charleston, and that's Dale Morris. He's the guy who actually created the whole concept of the Dutch dialogues. He worked for the Dutch government for about 15 years before he came to work for the City of Charleston. He put on the Dutch dialogues here, and we are blessed that he came to work for us. So he looks at every project that we do to see that we're using those concepts and that mindset of managing water, of finding places for water to reside. And just a couple examples, they're underway right now. West Ashley, I was on Shelley Drive the other day. We got a property, 3 properties that we bought out from flooded homes, and we've made rain gardens and places for water to reside. We've also done the same on James Island, Shadow Moss out in the Church Creek Basin. The $15 million project we're getting ready to do on Johns Island is all about the Dutch dialogues. It's all about buying property that we can then create more storage for water and do it in a way that our citizens can enjoy. Every time we do a project now, we think about how can this be an amenity for our citizens? Could it be a walkway? Could it be a park? Look at the low battery seawall that we're doing, reconstruction we did down there. Not only does it protect us, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I believe green infrastructure is a critical component to how we grow as a city. And I've done green roofs, I've built them. I've done bioswales, I've done natural retention. It can work really well. And it certainly should be part of our overall master planning. But I'll also say this, it's pretty essential that it's also maintained, because it's only as good as its maintenance. And time again, we have projects that are well intended, but again, if they're not properly maintained, then they can actually add to the problem. So it's important to focus on this stuff. It's great to experiment. There's a lot of technology and growing technologies when it comes to how you deal with water in a natural way. Also, obviously, I don't have to probably tell you all, solar and wind energy production. But again, you have to make sure that it's not just a talking point. You have to deal in the realities of it, and it doesn't fit everywhere. So it doesn't fit everywhere, and also it, as I said earlier, needs to be properly maintained. So I think it's a key issue, a key point, a critical component, but not the only component. Thank you.
The good thing about green infrastructure is that it has a regenerative quality, so it gets better as time goes on. For me, I'd reinvest in the city's rain garden program, where we gave grants to residents who wanted to turn their lawns into rain gardens. That helps with stormwater runoff. I'd also actually adapt some of the recommendations from the Dutch dialogues. It's not good enough that we just participate in that practice. We need to apply the recommendations. One of the recommendations being that we revitalize the Gadsden Creek. I'd also like to see things like the Billion Oyster Project here in Charleston. You know, one contributor to sea level rise is erosion. What would it look like to build reefs built out of oyster shells in our harbor and some of our more vulnerable areas? What would it look like to slow down the water? Things like that. That's regenerative green infrastructure that not only helps with our water quality, but it also helps with storm surge. Sorry, there was a little pest. Storm surge. So there are things we can do now, and green infrastructure is not just using sustainable materials. Green infrastructure is finding regenerative ways to build back what we've lost. And also, we need to reintroduce tree species that we've cut down. We can introduce tree species that do not interfere with the height of the power lines. We lost so much tree cover. It's making our city hot. And also, mature trees soak up to 40,000 gallons of water a year. So we need to bring those trees back as well.
Thank you. Our next question is on buildings, and there's a bit of preamble here to sort of ground the candidates. It is well documented that energy-intensive materials such as concrete, styrofoam, and spray foam insulations, and plastics such as vinyl are leading contributors to carbon emissions in the building sector. Many mayors across the U.S. are adopting progressive policies for new construction, which limits the use of such materials and requires that new buildings meet a certain metric for reducing carbon emissions. There are also programs like the Charleston Rises Green Building Certification, which requires buildings to be at least 30% more efficient than code to generate a percentage of their energy use from renewables. As mayor, what policies and practices would you implement in Charleston to address new buildings and carbon emissions?
So I just got to say one thing, that we've been doing this for several weeks now, and I think you got the longest question competition going on. And I have to listen to that and go, is there a question in this comment over here? So if I understand your question is, what would we do to make buildings more efficient? Is that the bottom line?
Reduce carbon emissions in the new buildings, yes.
Well, number one, I'm not a scientist, and I'm not an engineer, but I do know that I owned an old building on Broad Street, 89 Broad Street. It was constructed in the late 18th century. And I could take my hand along the windowsill and along the floorboard, and I could feel the cold air coming in during the winter months, which is not very long around here. But I also wondered how much of that hot air is escaping around the same time during the warm months. It was not an efficient building at all. And the efforts I tried to make, I was hamstrung by some of our zoning laws and regulations that we had on making improvements to that building. I mentioned this a little bit earlier about our older buildings and things that we can do to make those things a lot more efficient. So one of the things I would do is look at some of our zoning laws and regulations on renovating buildings, so that as we replace some of the windows and some of the floorboards and some of the insulation, that we use modern technology and up-to-date advances that are very much available over there to take that first step on the older buildings and making them much more efficient.
So y'all, we got to continue to strengthen building codes, and I don't know if many people know about this, but building codes are really set at a state and national level. There's like international building codes. So we have to advocate to continue to strengthen those building codes in order to reduce our energy footprint. As I said, I think it's 65% is estimated of the energy loss in the city of Charleston comes from buildings, not from automobiles or emissions from cars. So that's huge. So we look to be a leader ourselves. And what did we do? About 5 years ago, we replaced every light bulb in the city of Charleston buildings, parking garages, and everywhere else with LED lights, saving, I can't quote you the wattage and the effective carbon footprint. And then we did a deal with Dominion. I don't know if y'all have noticed, but we've replaced all the street lights in the city of Charleston from the old-fashioned combination halide and other technology that they had with LED lights throughout the city. They're not quite done yet, but the reduction in energy just from those two moves has been pretty remarkable.
Right. Look, I think it's critical how we build. A lot of what you see going up today is not built well. I'll take a little bit of exception on the question because concrete and closed cell insulation, not spray foam insulation, but closed cell insulation can actually be extremely energy efficient and sustainable. I've actually built LEEDs buildings, so I've done this before. And it is correct that we lose a lot of our carbon emissions come from buildings. So it's critical that we build right. And one of the things that you'll learn or you'll see about a lot of these very innovative products is they're only as good as the people that put them in. And oftentimes, especially on renovation projects, when you try and use modern materials, it ends up making matters worse if it's not installed correctly. And I won't get into the weeds on this, but I think it would be very important and something that the city could lead on in terms of working with the technical colleges and some of the high schools to do job training for how to apply a lot of these new technologies. Because let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, it's really good in terms of the advertisements, but again, if it's installed incorrectly, it can make things much worse. Thank you.
I don't know how you attempt to do it if we do not deregulate a lot of, if we don't deregulate some of the departments that create barriers for folks to either upgrade their homes, make modifications. We have too many barriers in place. I'm thinking specifically of the BAR. I don't know how we could attempt to make changes in this city. I think we're still mired in the past. I think we need to think about our land use policy. I think maybe the first step is controlled growth. We have a lot of growth. I'm hearing the stat for the first time about the emissions that come from buildings, yet, we see buildings go up every day. It feels as if. So I think it's the way we go about our land use policy, perhaps stemming the tide there, but also deregulation and freeing residents' hands so that they can make their homes more efficient. Also upping the standard when it comes to buildings. We need to make sure that the standards are more in line with where we need to be with regard to the climate crisis. I'll leave it there.
So this, again, what I said earlier is about retrofitting Charleston. Public buildings, as well as individuals that are doing their own private development and homes. When we retrofit Charleston for not only the 21st century, but the 22nd century, then we would automatically change how we operate, how we do business, how we communicate. So some of the things that I would do as mayor would be focus on decarbonizing buildings. There's resources out there that a lot of cities across the country have access and made that not only a goal, but put that into practice. They're doing it right now. We can do that. I would do that as our next mayor. Again, what I talked about earlier of having this green infrastructure portfolio standard, it would make sure that we do this, that there is the right accountability in place. And the incentive that we can provide, I would do a community benefits ordinance so that developers know that you have to meet these criteria for your development, unless it won't get approved. We don't have to say yes to every development. We want to work with developers that want to do well and do good at the same time. That is a way we could do that. We could also work with other organizations. There's not one here in South Carolina under the PACE program, which actually incentivize and provide resources to municipalities to work with local nonprofit groups to help them with their homes.
The next question is on environmental justice. The climate crisis deepens and exacerbates issues our frontline communities are already facing, from food insecurity to flooding to displacement.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Come back again.
The climate crisis deepens issues our frontline communities are already facing, from food insecurity to flooding to displacement. How have you engaged with environmental justice issues in the past, and what would you do as the mayor of Charleston to prioritize social equity alongside climate initiatives?
Well, we take into account all our citizens, no matter where. I'll give you an example. On the perimeter protection project that we've been working with the Corps of Engineers, even in those parts of the Upper Peninsula where the Corps, from an engineering point of view, felt that doing a wall in and out of the marsh line was impractical and just wasn't going to work, that we flood-proof any neighborhoods. Rosemount was one of them. The Bridge Point Apartments, I think, where Clay grew up, is another one where we were thoughtful and came up with the means and the proposals to protect those neighborhoods as well. And I admit, y'all, for centuries, Charleston spent money for infrastructure mostly where rich white people lived. And that's why today we're focusing on the Upper East Side with a drainage project, with King and Hugie Street with a drainage project, with solving the problem of drainage over on the west side, over at West Edge and Gadsden Green. We have those proposals to handle those areas in our city that truthfully were long neglected.
Yeah, it's difficult, folks. I mean, I'll admit it. To try and balance social equity with environmentalism, we were just talking about building materials, for example, right? Well, building sustainably is more expensive, sometimes substantially more expensive, and that's going to add to the affordable crisis that we have in Charleston. But it can be done. We built the first workforce housing project in the city, and it was a sustainable building, one Cool Blow, on the Upper Peninsula. It can be done, but it has to be done thoughtfully. And you're going to have to figure out incentives that encourage people and developers, or in some cases require them to build with sustainable product. But then we have to really address head-on the affordability crisis. And one of the initiatives that I'm supporting and believe strongly in is to prevent things like gentrification. Is if you've been in your home for longer than 25 years, then you should have a property tax cap on it so that you're not forced out by rising taxes because of development happening around you. Thank you.
Belvin, would you mind repeating your question, please?
Yes. The climate crisis exacerbates issues our frontline communities are already facing. How have you engaged with environmental justice issues in the past, and what would you do as the mayor of Charleston to prioritize social equity alongside climate initiatives?
I am the co-chair of the Friends of Gadsden Creek and been so for several years. As co-chair of the Friends of Gadsden Creek, we advocate and work directly with historically black neighborhood on the west side, colloquially called Back the Green. I am the only candidate on the ballot that's currently taking or holding a developer accountable for their growth on the west side, which has challenged the quality of life for folks on that area. Social justice organizing is what I spent the bulk of my years in Charleston doing, from Women's March to Black Voters Matter work, my time away from the campaign trail, you name it. I think that you have to have a sound race and class analysis to lead the city, given that the city has engaged in a pattern of taking from black communities historically.
When I was an intern for Congressman Jim Clyburn, he, at that point, was wrapping up starting the Environmental Justice Brain Trust as chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. And since that time, it has now emerged as part of environmental justice and health disparity. It's a national conference now, started here in Charleston. So in the past, the things I've been involved with has been working with municipalities, nonprofit organizations, not only in our state but elsewhere, regarding the conversations and action plans of what people could do right now as it relates to accountability for the injustices that has taken place. So as mayor of the city of Charleston, I would do what other cities have already done as it relates to Justice 40. Justice 40 federal program that identifies 468 programs throughout the federal government, a lot at EPA, as well as the Department of Energy, the Office of Legacy Management, in which I worked with, not only here in the state of South Carolina, but across the country. And how do we provide resources to local nonprofit organizations and government in order to solve these environmental injustices that exist? The other part of that in the city of Charleston as mayor, I would have an environmental justice action plan so we can not only coordinate, but have the accountability we need to get this right.
You were a little off on that time.
I was a little off
You were
on
a
that.
little off on that one. But your wife is keeping them. Let's just be honest with one another. Let's get this out in the open. The city of Charleston has a terrible track record in years past of dumping on people who have limited resources. Go over here to the east side of town, and there's two big towers over there that are a testament to we built a facility to burn trash in people's backyards of folks who could not live someplace else. We thought we were being smart, and we moved and opened a trash dump off of Haggett Avenue. Open trash dump. Well, I remember very well, and you probably, all the folks in this room remember that very well. An open trash dump. Where did we build it? Next to a housing project. Recently, I served on an ad hoc committee to address our standards for flood management and improve our standards for building new residences and renovation new residences. And one of the people on that committee had the audacity to suggest that we do not have those types of standards for low-income housing. So in 2022 and 2023, the mindset in this community is, let's dump on people who don't have the resources to do that. That has to stop. We need to make sure that the standards that we apply for housing, for environmental concerns of any nature whatsoever, have a very strong stand and say, not in my backyard, we're not going to do it to people who have limited means. We're going to make sure that we treat people with fairness and equity because we all inhabit the same planet.
Thank you. Our next question is on energy. Dominion Energy, the utility of Charleston, has solar and wind as a small fraction of their energy production compared to coal and gas. As mayor, what do you do to advance clean energy locally and to advocate on the state level for clean energy?
From the state level, I think it's important. A lot of these initiatives, if you're going to get anything done at the State House, and I can attest to this because I served in the legislature for 3 terms, if Charleston asks for something, they typically like to thumb their nose at us. We have a love-hate relationship with the rest of the state. But in all reality, I think Greenville and Columbia are having the same issue, want the same initiatives. And you need to band together with the municipalities in order to get something done in terms of promoting things like solar legislation and wind legislation. It can be done. There's an interest certainly in Columbia. And on the local level, I think, you lead by example. You lead by what you do with city buildings and by code enforcement. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you one more time to repeat the question for me.
Yes.
Please.
Solar and wind are a small part of Dominion Energy's portfolio compared to a coal and gas. As mayor, what would you do to advance clean energy locally and to advocate on the state level for clean energy?
Yeah, I think working with neighboring municipalities is also important. I think that Charleston wants to fashion itself as a leader in things such as climate change. I don't think we've done that yet. We have the power to influence other areas, and I think we can do that by stating it as a priority. I really think that, again, deregulation might be the way to go. From what I'm hearing anecdotally, it's really difficult for folks to embrace more sustainable solutions for their homes and for their businesses. So we have to make sure that we relax regulations with regard to folks' homes and also commercial properties as well.
So one of the things that I would do as mayor is create a clean energy and environmental justice advisory council so that we have not only the technical experts, but those that are living with this, because it's really needed. Because here you have an opportunity to provide direct feedback to your mayor as it relates to here's some things that we ought to be doing. Now, certainly with that, we will lay out the guidelines of what we know we need to be doing and just do it. Some of that, as I said earlier, is related to having the right standards, having the right ordinances in place, and the accountability in order to get these things done. Part of that, as I said earlier, also relates to having a built-in resilient infrastructure and community grants. These resources exist, folks. It already exists out the 468 I mentioned earlier. We're just not accessing them in order to make it a priority. And it also goes back to how we build. We lead by example, but also we make sure that developers, whatever you want to do, you follow these standards. As it relates to solar, as it relates to wind, as it relates to all things clean energy. Got you this time. I yield 30 seconds to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, you can tell by the answers to this question, we're all struggling with the answer to this question. Let's just be honest with one another. The mayor has already touched upon some of the stuff that the city has done in the course of the time that he's been mayor and I've been on city council, with some of the incentives that we had with LED lights and things of that nature, and some of the vehicles that are part of the city fleet to improve our energy output. So I look around my neighborhood. I live in West Ashley in Northbridge Terrace, and I see solar panels on some houses. But a good number of neighborhoods have restrictions about the ability to install those type of panels on their residents. And zoning laws also have some restrictions on whether or not you can install those as well. So one of the things we do, I think, would be to look at some of the restrictions and remove some of those restrictions as to whether or not homeowners and businesses can improve that and eliminate some of that red tape to have that added on. And I think I'll stop there.
So by following the climate action plan and leading the conversion to electric vehicles, that creates the economics in the state. And y'all, we really have a good opportunity here in South Carolina. Think about it. Oh, by the way, we've converted about half of our buses, CARTA buses, to electric vehicles. Guess where they were built? In Greenville. With Scout, we'll have the third auto manufacturing in South Carolina for electric vehicles and electric vehicle battery production as well. If the political leadership in this state doesn't get it, with all this business coming to us, I don't know what will drive them there. But in addition to that, did you know the biggest turbines in the United States are made in Greenville as well? And in North Charleston on the Navy base, there's a test facility for those turbines. I've advocated for opening up the leases for offshore wind power. Most of the better places are off of Myrtle Beach, and most of the folks in the business will tell you off of New England is better than South Carolina. So that may be a while getting here, but we need to continue to promote that and advocate it. Thirdly, after the EV works out, hydrogen cells. I met with some folks from the Savannah River plant. We could be a leader for hydrogen cell technology in the United States. So you add all those alternate energies sources together, and it's time to stop.
Our next question is on nature preservation. As sea levels continue to rise, our salt marshes will drown in some places and move inland in others. What should the city of Charleston do to preserve, defend, restore, or enhance salt marshes and tidal creeks as they migrate onto land?
It's tied into the response to green infrastructure. We need to make sure we protect the vital spaces that we do have, including the Gadsden Creek. It's an opportunity for the city to demonstrate some courage and preserve an area that's actually providing some sort of drainage feature and still performs a tidal function. I think that would be one way to lead on this issue. We need more things like bioswales. We need things like the return of trees, and we also need to preserve some green spaces. Again, our land use policy to me concerns me because we have way too many parking spaces. Like with other cities have reevaluated how many parking spaces we need, whether it be for new construction or for, some sort of some shopping centers that are no longer performing at a high level. So we need to rethink that, and we can rehab those spaces that are all concrete. We can bring them back to something that resembles nature, and hopefully that can help with some of the issues that we're dealing with. Again, we can use regenerative practices to help protect our natural resources and green infrastructure.
Some of the things, I'm going to repeat myself with some of the things that I would do as mayor, because in order to protect what you laid out, we have to be intentional. We have to be as intentional about doing that as we are in building things because of profit. So by protecting wetlands is something that we can do as a city. Also working with the nonprofit organizations within our community, because they're on the front lines, making sure that they have the support that they need, not only from their city, but some of that is also working with the private sector and the philanthropic community in order to provide the resources, the community grants that you all need to do the work every single day. So we can complement that, not compete with that. And then the big picture also is having a net zero construction as a goal and a requirement. These are things that we can do to make sure that whether it's hard engineering, environmental approaches, or people-oriented measures is important. Nature is going to win. Water will always find its way. We can't outsmart nature. When we understand that, we will begin to implement the best practices that we need so that, again, when all of us are gone, our children and grandchildren will inherit something worth fighting for.
Would you mind repeating the last part of the question?
Yes. What should the city of Charleston do to preserve, defend, restore, or enhance salt marshes and tidal creeks as they migrate onto land?
So if you look around us, we have this body of water called the Ashley River, and this body of water called the Cooper River, and the Stono River, and other rivers over on Daniel Island side. I'm fortunate enough to live on a piece of property with a tidal creek. And I look outside my backyard, we've been there for over almost 15 years. I can see the deterioration of the marshland in my backyard. It's from the green part of it to turning browner year by year. So we're doing something wrong. Now, the one thing that the city passed, and that we did as well on city council, is we passed a ban on plastic bags. And I believe that initiative started locally on the Isle of Palms because they understood the impact that plastic has on our environment and the impact it has on our marshland and on our sea life. Recently, there was an article in the paper about the inability that we were warned not to eat shellfish out of our local creeks. So we're obviously doing something wrong in how we're treating that. So we took a small step on plastic bag bans, and I think that we can take other small steps on similar types of projects and some types of ordinances that were within our authority to do those sort of things to protect our wetlands.
So y'all, a big part of our sea level rise strategies is to think about where sea level rise is going to occur. And you wouldn't believe the level of detail and predictions we have now in mapping for what sea level rise is going to do to our region by 2050 and even by the end of the century. So we're tracking where that migration is going to occur and what do we need to do to be ready for it. So we already decided in our comprehensive plan 2 years ago to account for this, and we're rewriting our zoning code right now to reduce or eliminate density, future building in places where where it's less than 6 feet above mean sea level. That's where the migration is going to occur. Why build in the places where you know 30, 50, 100 years from now you're going to have a problem and people are going to flood out? So we are working on that, and also to protect the environment of the marshes that we now have. I want to shout out to former council member Carol Jackson, who's here tonight. She really did a lot of the legwork, but I've been proud to serve as chair of the James Island Task Force that's been focused the last few years on cleaning up James Island Creek and the marshlands over there. And we're, with the help of water keepers and many partners in the region and partnerships with the town of James Island and James Island Public Service District and Charleston Water Service, we're really making a difference, and we're going to be converting a lot of old septic tanks to sewer systems.
I believe that the natural environment, and I think you all do too, is probably the greatest asset besides the people that live here that we have here in the Lowcountry. And it needs to be protected at all costs. But the reality of it is it's going to take money, and a lot of it, if we're going to do what we need to do in order to protect the natural environment. So how do you do that? Well, I was proud to be part of the reauthorization of the Conservation Bank based at the state, which is one of the leading sponsors and funding of protecting the wetlands. I've also worked and served on the board for several years of Coastal Conservation League, which was probably the leading advocate for land protection and fresh and saltwater wetlands protection over the past 30, 40 years. So it's going to require a group effort. You're going to need to work with experts like the League, like this organization. But the reality of it is, if you're going to actually have meaningful progress forward, it can't just be in a study. You need to figure out a funding source to make sure that this, the Lowcountry is protected. Thank you.
Next question is on weatherization, and there's some grounding to start us as well. Recent research has shown that 1 in 4 families across the Southeast are energy insecure, and Charlestonians living in poverty spend as much as 37% of their income on energy. Home weatherization programs that come into low-income homes and do energy efficiency and repair work can alleviate that burden while lowering carbon emissions. As mayor, what would you do to connect folks in need with weatherization services?
Retrofit Charleston. As mayor of the city of Charleston, whether it is public housing, low-income housing, whether it's those that are on a fixed income, our seniors, however you want to categorize it, people that need our most help, people that are living, even for those that are renting, being able so that the homeowner, maybe they too are struggling, but making sure that they are not slumlords. So here are things that we would do, here are things I would do as mayor. Some of what I said earlier. There's an organization called PACE, Property Assessed Clean Energy, nonprofit group. They're in 36 states. They're not here in South Carolina. We would look at that as an option to help. We would also look at community development block grants that exist, as I said earlier, from Justice 40 out to over 400 programs that exist throughout the federal government, EPA, HUD, Department of Energy, et cetera, as it relates to local government accessing those resources for local nonprofit organizations and working with Palmetto CAP is one example. We can work with them. They get money from the state, but oftentimes it's not enough. These are practical things that we can do, and these are things that I would do as mayor. Not only that we get the resources, but it goes into the right hands, the people that are actually doing the work. And it creates an opportunity for us to hire those folks as well to do it. Weatherization, the Sustainability Institute is another example.
Several years ago, I had the opportunity to travel on one of these National League of Cities seminars to Los Angeles, and we took a tour of Watts. And in that tour, they showed us some low-income housing that was being constructed. And I was very much impressed with the mindset that the folks out in Los Angeles had on the construction of these homes. Number one, they were not into a floodplain area. They were on regular high ground. Two, that they were energy efficient, and they maintained the types of appliances that you would find in any average home. So you need to start there. You need to make sure that any government program that is involved in low-income or affordable housing, that the construction meets those high level of standards. I mentioned to you a few moments ago that our family had a store on King Street, and we would make deliveries, either appliances or furniture. And we made a delivery in a residence down off of Bogart Street. And one of the men I was working with would work at the fire station at the same time. And we walked into the place, and there was a slum. And I almost vomited by the smell that we encountered by walking in there, at the low level of concern that the landlord had for that property. The state has a Landlord-Tenant Act that provides tenants with certain Bill of Rights. I would do that on a local level with our city codes and ordinances.
So our building codes currently require energy efficiency standards. So if you're building something new, but rehabs and particularly those with low income who can't afford them sometimes need help. I must say it's like deja vu here or something, or in another life, about 35 years ago, I helped restart the Charleston Human Services Commission, which is now Palmetto CAP, and they run a weatherization program that's financed through the federal government, through CDBG. And so if y'all know of anybody that needs a weatherization audit and upfit of their home, particularly if they're low income, those resources are out there. We always do it at the city, by the way, whenever someone has applied with us for some for some rehab assistance on their home. But we have resources that are existing, that are out there. If y'all know anybody that needs it, call me.
Well, I'd start with dealing with our public housing stock that we have here in the city, because, ladies and gentlemen, it's in horrible condition. I was able to go and sit down with a woman, Ms. Barnwell, that lives over in Gadsden Green. You've probably read about Gadsden Green. But I do need to give a shout out to Mika Gadsden here for her efforts on bringing the deplorable conditions of that property to light. So we need to start there. A lot of those buildings were built in the 1930s. And when I went and met with Ms. Barnwell, there was mold everywhere. She has asthma. She's been in there for 35 years, and basically nobody pays attention to her. The other thing is, which is odd, there's no trees or bushes anywhere on that entire project, it seems like. So again, I'd start there. It's going to be an uphill climb, a tough challenge, but I would start with a regional housing authority, because right now the city of Charleston has a housing authority. The city has a housing department within its own budget. North Charleston has a housing authority. The county has a housing authority. They're all competing for the same funds, and it's horribly, horribly inefficient. And the people that are suffering the most are the people that live in those units. Thank you.
I think we most be able to accurately understand the issues that people are dealing with right now, people are contending with right now. Weatherization can't take place, can't happen in low-income communities without first an acknowledgement of the issues. As William just said, Back to Green is one of those areas that is very, very neglected, has been neglected by the city. Every first Tuesday, my organization, the Friends of Gadsden Creek, holds a tenant meeting with the residents there, and they've outlined for years, well, for months, but for years we've heard complaints, everything from energy costs to the lack of trees. Even one neighbor went rogue and planted her own tree that the city has not, thankfully, removed. What I'm fearful of is that what gets measured in low-income areas will get managed in a way where folks will be displaced. We know that in low-income communities, we are good at diagnosing the issue and how grave the situation has gotten, but we're not prepared to keep people in place. And so we know that most vouchers that have been handed out from folks in that community whose units have been rehabbed, they're redeeming those vouchers in another city, in another county. So I'm more interested in making sure that we can make folks whole and not just examine the issue. We need to make sure that we keep people in Charleston for as long as they need to be.
This next question is a little more big picture. It's about the Climate Action Plan. The Climate Action Plan. Charleston's 2021 Climate Action Plan pledged to reduce emissions from 2018 levels by 56% by 2030 to net zero by 2050. First, do you pledge to work to meet these targets? And secondly, how can city government lead on this beyond what we are already doing? And are we doing enough quickly enough? Yes. How can city government lead on this beyond what we are already doing? And are we doing enough quickly enough?
So the first part of the question was, will we lead on that and continue to meet those goals? And I would do everything I could as mayor to do that. Whether or not we can continue to those goals and exceed those goals, I don't have an answer for you. I don't know. Because what we're doing right now is hard, quite frankly. And part of what we're doing requires a lot more education and a lot more community involvement than what we have right now. We had a forum recently dealing with addressing homelessness. And one of the biggest challenges dealing with homelessness is awareness. So we're comfortable in Charleston. Let's just be honest with ourselves. We're pretty comfortable in Charleston with what we have. So part of what we need to do is bring this to the forefront a lot better. These types of forums are critically important to address these issues, to educate the community as to these things. Some of these questions are very technical, and the issues that we're doing are very complicated to implement. So I would do everything I could as mayor to make sure that we not only maintain that level, but we exceed it. And I would do that by reaching out to the community and getting the community much more involved than what we're doing right now.
Well, I absolutely commit to the goals of our Climate Action Plan. And again, I am very proud that the city of Charleston has passed one, the only city in the state of South Carolina to even have a Climate Action Plan. We are converting our fleet. We have a plan to convert our fleet to electric vehicles. I mentioned to you, we've converted all our light bulbs to LEDs. We have composting programs that we've started for our citizens to reduce waste in our city. We started a mattress recycling program so that, again, to reduce the waste stream. We're one of the first cities in the state to have a ban on single-use plastics. We're promoting different building codes and better transportation, and we're also trying to encourage all our citizens. I know you think globally and act locally. We have a one-pager, y'all, from our climate action plan. It's entitled Take Climate Action Today. And it's on this one page, it's about every practical idea you could as a citizen and a homeowner to think about ways that we can all reduce our carbon footprint. Another way of saying it is think big, act small, but start somewhere. We're doing that. By the way, this year we converted all of our our leaf blowers in the city of Charleston to electric leaf blowers. We no longer have gas leaf blowers in the city of Charleston.
To answer the question, yes, absolutely. I think it's a noble goal and worth pursuing. And in terms of how you do that, what I would say is that what really attracts me to local government is that you can try a lot of things. You can experiment and you can try different things. And if it doesn't work perfectly, you can try something else. I really believe that local government is where the best government policies are born. I think it's a great laboratory for good government policy, and it makes its way up, hopefully, to the national level where there's so much dysfunction. So I'm excited to try different things, and I don't want you to get nervous and think I'm going to be shooting from the hip all the time, but you need to get 6 people to agree with you, and you can do big things, and I'm excited to bring that mentality of action to the city of Charleston. Thank you.
We're headed in a positive direction, but we definitely could do more as a city. I think the next leader of Charleston not only has to have the experience, but has to have the vision, and that vision has to include all of Charleston. I think we can do more, again, around our car dependency. It's not just enough to have an electric fleet of vehicles. We need to make sure that people can access them. I live in West Ashley, and if I wanted to take a bus downtown, I honestly could not tell you where I would catch that bus. We need to make sure that we employ the expertise of arborists that help us protect our trees and not just leave it up to the power companies. We really could do more in the way of reaching our objectives with regard to our emissions and our climate plan. We need leadership with the political will. I think we've studied these issues ad nauseum. There are a number of plans. It's on votemika.com. A number of plans that the city has commissioned. We spent lots of money commissioning these plans, and yet we have not implemented many of the recommendations. Again, like the Dutch dialogues, I'd like to see us actually fully implement some of those plans finally.
Do you all remember the question?
Do you pledge to meet the targets of the 2021 Climate Action Plan? How can state government lead on this beyond what we are already doing, and are we doing enough quickly enough?
Yes and no. So by that, there are some good things that we're doing. I'm not going to take credit away from what the current administration has done and what the current administration has inherited. What I am saying is there's much more we need to be doing. It's the price of admission. It's the bare minimum. There's much more that we should be doing because there are a lot of things that other cities of our size and smaller are doing. Several of them are my clients. Work with them all the time regarding this very same issue. So if we're able to actually have a progress to goal that is not so much in a comprehensive plan every 10 years, but that it is reflected in our annual budget. What is the progress to goal so that we can truly be net zero? Do we have net zero or road to zero toolkits that everyone could apply in their daily lives, in their daily activity, but also for those that are doing business here? It's going to take all of us, community, it's going to take government, it's going to take the private sector in order for us to get to zero. So as mayor, those are some of the things that I would do to advance where we ought to be. As I said earlier, there are a number of programs, there are a number of resources, there are a number of collaborative efforts that are being done, and we need to be doing the same thing here in the Holy City.
For this next question, I'd like you to imagine the year 2030. You spent the last 6 years as mayor implementing your vision for mobilizing Charleston to meet rising sea levels and increase climate impacts. Can you share an aspirational vision of how Charleston has changed and grown under your climate leadership? Yes, the year is 2030. You spent the last 6 years implementing your vision for climate action and climate resilience in Charleston. Can you share an aspirational vision of how Charleston has changed and grown under your climate leadership?
Nobody gets their home flooded to start with, and we're protected and have the projects in place that will protect us in the future from sea level rise. That's what we're doing right now. Reduce emissions by 56% of what 2018 emissions were by 2030, and feel good about the change that we're making on climate change globally by all the kinds of things that I'm shared with you in the last few questions, and encouraging all our citizens to do the same. Y'all, we're in this boat together. This is a global climate crisis. It's not just here in Charleston, and we need to encourage everyone to be engaged. I'm proud of, I mentioned it already, of passing that climate action plan, and we will be accountable. You can go to our performance website and see how we're doing on our climate action plan, and we'll track that over time and post the numbers, and we'll be accountable for trying to follow this plan and creating a situation where Charleston will be safe for generations to come. I mean, I've called this issue of flooding and sea level rise, which are the impact from climate change, to be the existential crisis of our city long term.
Well, I would agree that it is sea level rise is an existential crisis. It's just that some of us have very different ways of addressing it. I look at it more pragmatically. I don't believe in more studies. I believe in a lot more action on that front. And in terms of other initiatives that I would like to see in 2030 would be the BRT in place and running, and the low line in place. Thank you.
By 2030, which is right around the corner, I really do hope that we have more African American communities intact and made whole and not prone to flooding and other natural disasters. I also hope that folks who live in flood-prone areas are able to have, we're able to see more mitigation projects in their neighborhood. It's an equity question as much as it is an actual question about the climate change. Again, climate change needs to have a race analysis, and we need to care for the most marginalized communities in Charleston, and we don't do that typically. A lot of the plans I've heard tonight reflect deep concern for an area of Charleston that yields the most tax revenue. And that's not how we need to plan in our city. That's not how we need to protect our city. Everyone should have access to climate change solutions that help mitigate harm. And I hope that in 2030, all of Charleston, regardless of where you live, whether it's the Battery or on the east side, have access to climate change solutions.
It should not be a luxury. I'm 41 years old. There are places that flood now that flooded 41 years ago. My wife, well, I ain't gonna say her age, but I'm sorry. There are areas my mother, she's 64, I can say her age, floods now than when she was a girl. By 2030, I do not want my 6 and 8 year old to where it floods now when by 2030, or when they're 41, when they're 64, that it still floods. We did not think about life after gentrification. By 2030, as mayor of the city of Charleston, I do not want to have anyone displaced because of a health impact and environmental injustice at all. Only way for that to happen is for us to do it together. The Soldier's Creed taught me 23 years ago not leaving a fallen comrade behind. I've taken that to heart in everything I've done in and out of uniform. And as mayor, I would do everything in my power not to leave any neighborhood, community, or resident behind. And when you have that mentality, when you put that into practice every single day, we could achieve that beyond 2030.
So I'm going to look at this from maybe a little more pragmatic standpoint. I hope by 2030,
We've come to the part of the evening where we have our closing statements. These are 60-second closing statements, and we'll proceed in reverse order of the opening statements, so beginning with Mr. Tecklenburg.
Well, thank you all for having us, and again, thank you for the honor of serving as your mayor. I've served now for 8 years. I must admit, I love the job. It's great to have a job where you get up every morning and try to help folks, and if you have a mindset like I think I do, of leaving things better than you have found them. Being a mayor gives you ample opportunities to put that into practice. I'm very proud, as I mentioned, of passing the state's first climate action plan and our updated sea level rise and flooding strategies. And these, y'all, are more than plans sitting on a shelf. I know that people use that expression. You can go to our performance website. We openly follow and track these plans, what we're proposing. Occasionally we update them. We updated our sea level rise plan just a year ago based on the now current predictions of what sea level rise would be. I would love to have the opportunity to continue to serve. Thank you all.
well, thank you all for the organizations who put this together, an opportunity for you to hear from the various candidates. The last question asked was about vision. And let's look at that in reverse order. Where were we 8 years ago? And the things that you've asked about and where we should be 4 years from now is exactly where we should have been 8 years ago or 4 years ago. And why haven't those things that we've been talking about been accomplished in the past 8 or 4 years? And that's what a leader's supposed to do. A leader's supposed to have the vision to tackle these type of issues head on. And why don't we have more of this in place than we did 4 years ago? And a leader has to have the ability to articulate that vision and then have the ability to get his people behind him to have those things done. So the question you ask yourself is, who among us sitting up here today has the ability to understand that vision and to put that vision into work?
Well, thank you all again for having us, and I appreciate the questions and how each question was very specific into this topic. As I said earlier, Charleston is home. And for me, all of this is personal because of what I will leave behind, what we will leave behind for our kids, our grandkids, our neighbors, etc. And the next mayor of the city of Charleston must understand that. Tonight, I tried my best in the time allotted to outline specifically what I would do as mayor. Things that are very practical. Not all of it requires council approval. It requires a shared vision. It requires bold servant leadership in order to get the resources that are needed so that all of us play a role into making sure that Charleston goes beyond the next 4 years, but for a generation yet born will inherit something worth fighting for and preserving. Thank you so much.
I've been really struggling with my words tonight. And I don't know why, but I'll say this, as the only working class candidate running for mayor, it's really difficult. It's really difficult to manage a process, a lot of emotion, knowing the lived reality of so many people like myself, working class, in a fairly new construction type apartment that's already seen the ramifications of climate change, the mere discussion of the climate crisis, when you center marginalized communities, black communities, Gullah communities, is met with hostility in the city. And while the plans and the visions and the hope and the way forward tonight have been encouraging, it's not the lived reality. Charleston deserves a leader that understands that we're facing an existential threat. I'm glad that my fellow candidates have adopted that phrase. We are facing an existential threat that is the climate change crisis. And there's a level of urgency that needs to be met. And I think Charleston deserves that leader, and I think I am that leader.
Again, thank you all for having us here tonight. I think this has been very informative. You all are leading from the forefront on this climate crisis. And yes, we've doing a lot of these, folks, and we are learning from one another. And frankly, I think it's making us better candidates. We joked that I could probably give her closing remarks, maybe not those last ones, but it is important. It is important to have this dialogue. But one thing you keep hearing about is we need leadership. We need vision. We need a change. And I think it's time for my generation to step up and lead our cities forward to the next chapter. And I'm excited to do that. Thank you.
A round of applause for all of our candidates. Thank you to our candidates for coming and talking this through in such depth and detail. Thank you for everyone for coming to learn more. This is a League One Voters co-led endeavor, so I have to tell you to vote. You have to go out and vote. So please keep educating yourself, and then November 7th, go on Election Day or vote early in person or absentee by mail.